This lesson covers Excel for our Information Technology for Hospitality course. So this first piece that we're looking at, the overview video, is just to understand the basic features of Microsoft Excel and use them. Define some of the terms that we're going to refer to on and on. You'll see these in some of the lessons and exercises. And then look at what can be put into an Excel spreadsheet and look at how to enter a formula and what a formula does for you. So I'm going to be bopping back and forth in between this PowerPoint and an Excel sheet. So we're going to pop up our Excel book here. So when you open Microsoft Excel, either by clicking on your Start menu and going into Programs, Microsoft Office Excel, or by clicking on the Start menu and typing Excel and hitting Enter, you come up with a blank spreadsheet. And you'll see that you've got several tabs at the top. This whole top piece where all the commands, or things that you can do, which we call commands are, is the ribbon. In the ribbon, we have it divided down into tabs. We have the File tab, Home, Insert, Page Layout, and so on. We also have some contextual tabs that will pop up every so often when we're working in table formatting, or if we put in a picture, we'll find that we have some other tabs available. The very first thing I want you to do when you're using Microsoft Office 2010 is to save this file to your G drive. Because if you do not save it, then you don't actually open up all of the options that are available in Office 2010. You would probably pop this into your G drive so that you can access it from any computer on the campus. When we're in Excel, we now have all of the options open because you can see we have the .xlsx extension here. Sometimes what you're going to find is that you need to share an Excel sheet or send an Excel sheet to another customer. In that case, there are a couple of options that you'll want to know about. Not everybody has Office 2010, so we can save as an Adobe PDF, or if we go back into that Save As dialog again, it pops up this window that gives us more options that many people don't really explore. So here we'll see the Save As type. We can actually change this to an Excel 97 2003 sheet. That will allow other people to get into the document even if they don't have 2010, if they've got an older version. So here we are in Excel. Let's have a look around. The Home tab tries to group all of your most common tasks that you're going to get into over and over again. So we have our copy and paste over in our clipboard command group. But you can also expand this command group. Anytime you see one of these little arrows, it means that you can expand the command group to have more options. When we are in the paste section, you'll see from the drop down that there are some paste options. So you can actually do some paste special type features. So you can paste something that you copied to your clipboard as an image. You can keep the formatting or match your new formatting. So if you've already set a look to this spreadsheet and you've got your fonts and your colors all laid out and you copy from somewhere else, you can paste and use your incoming or your existing look. And we'll get into that further later on when we get into themes in Microsoft Word. We have our font options where we can set all of our information, alignment, our formatting in here, so we can actually change our formatting for each cell into some different options, set them as fractions, as percentage, time, dates, general, number. And generally, if you're putting text and dates and things all in, you'll set general, so there's no specific format and lets you decide what you want it to look like, or text only. And you'll see that those options are typically going to be set by column or by row. So for instance, I may want to set my top row in here to have a specific format, such as an 18-point font, bold, and I might change my text color to a different color so that my headings are in a different color than the rest. I want it to match all the way through. Whereas the rest of it, I may want to have my standard 11-point, not bold. That way it helps to divide things up. Other things that we can do, we can format as a table, and you'll see that you then get all the same styles as you have in Microsoft Word. So what I advise you to do is when you're finished and you've actually completed your entire Excel document, then you worry about whether you want to format as a table or set all your styles. That way you make sure that they apply to everything. Now, You'll see that our spreadsheet is divided into an array of columns and rows. Columns are named by letter, rows by number. When we click on a cell, you'll see that the cell title shows up in the name box. So I am in cell B1, so that specifies the intersection of those cells. And you can see those change as we go through this process. Now, in Excel, you have an option of having multiple sheets, which is why it's a workbook. Right now I'm in a spreadsheet, sheet 1, as you can see at the bottom here, of this workbook. I can add more sheets down here, and I can also right-click on the sheet and rename it. So for instance, I might want this to be my sheet for 2013, and right-click on sheet 2 and rename it to 2014. And then just by clicking on these tabs, I can move back and forth between the sheets. Now, in this case, what I want to show you is if we wanted to set up a simple calendaring tracker, we could set up January to December as our row 1, and then in our column A, 1 to 31. Now, in order to do that, we could type all of those, which would take a little bit longer. In my case, what I want to do is just type January. And then if you look at the selection box around January, you'll see that the bottom right corner has a special little box around it. If I grab that with my mouse, and this takes some practice, I can drag across and it'll show me what it's filling as I drag. And when I let go over here at December, it will fill all that in. Over in A2, I want to fill down from 1 to 31. So I can actually select 1. I can click the Fill drop-down, Fill in Series, and I want to fill this column, step value of 1, stop value of 31. And you may need to pause and replay this a few times, but I've chosen a column to fill in a linear growth pattern, and then click OK, and it will fill down until it gets to where it should be. So there you can see we very quickly and easily set up 1 to 31, January to December. Now, when we want to resize our columns or our rows, we can select them and then double click. You see how my cursor just turned into a double-headed arrow? I can double click, and in theory that should size it to fit whatever's in that column. This does not always work, and sometimes it works, but until you click off, you don't see it. I can also right-click on here, and I can choose the row height and specify a specific height in here in pixels. And then it sets them all up to that exact height. Rows are a little bit different. I can double-click on the row to resize to the contents of it. Or I can select all my columns by dragging across the letters at the top. You see the full column is selected. And again, right-click somewhere in here, select column width. In this case, it's going to ask how many characters. I'm going to say 14 characters wide. So columns are by characters, rows are by pixels. So it's a little bit of a confusion to it. Very quickly, though, I've put all of my content in here and formatted it to the way I want. If I then say this is my entire content area, I can drag down. I have to remember in this case that I'm going all the way over to M and down to 31. Start from M and drag down to select a cell range. I'm going to start by December, over to A1 and drag down to select a cell range. A cell range means I've selected more than one cell. Sometimes it's a little tricky to grab it. With that selected, I can then format this as a table and choose to apply my table has headers. And there we go. We've got our full piece. I'm going to change A1 from column 1 to date. Again, we'll save often. Control S or File Save will let you save. And you'll see that because I'm now in a formatted table, I have this contextual tab that we talked about. The Design tab does not exist all the time, only when you're in something that has some extra options. There are quite a few extra tabs that are contextual that if they were in the initial layout, it would get a little bit messy. Also, you'll see because I have QuickBooks and Acrobat Pro installed on my computer, I have these tabs. So Microsoft Office will actually look at what options you have and what software you have installed on your computer to add some extra options for you. I'm going to come back to the Home tab again, and we'll see there's our completed piece. Other things that we can get into, we'll hop over to our PowerPoint for a moment here and just browse through. You can read through all of this information yourself. I'm not going to read it out to you because it's sitting here in PowerPoint in Blackboard. When we get into content, this is important to know that you can put numbers, text, dates, times, and formulas inside a cell. This does not mean you can't use pictures. It just means that picture is not going inside of the cell. When we put a date in, we can format it as we want. So if I put into my, and again, this is not going to be a spreadsheet I use later, but I can put January 1, 2014 in here. And you'll see that it formats it in a default standard. I can then change how that is formatted by expanding my formatting command group here. So if I go into date, once I've expanded this, I can choose, no, I want it to show month, day, comma, year. As soon as I apply that, you'll see that it changes how that is formatted for me. So now every time I add a date in here, it will format it month, day, comma, year. Other things that can be formatted is numbers can be a simple number, a decimal number. We can specify how many decimal points we want to have showing, so it'll round off. If you only want 2 decimal points showing, it would actually round this number 75.375 to 75.38 if we've specified 2 decimal points. I want you to play in that formatting pop-up so that you can see exactly how that works. 0.20 would be formatted to 20% if I set it as a percentage column, and of course currency. So I want you to come in here and just put a number in, any of your cells, and then expand this formatting window again. Click on number, and then you can choose decimal places in here. You can change it to currency. We go into accounting. We can see again it's going to put a $sign in front of it and keep standard decimal places, so it doesn't. You shouldn't change too much of that. Percentage shows me what that would look like if it's a fraction. If I want to keep it just as plain text. When you are formatting, typically what you're going to do is click on the letter at the top of the column and format the entire column the same way. So there I've made this entire column currency. If I type something in the rows beneath, it is going to know everything that I type in that column is going to be currency. The next piece that you need to understand is formulas. You can use Excel basically as a calculator if you want to. So let's Alt-Tab back to our spreadsheet. As soon as I type an equal sign into a cell, my cell address changes to a formula drop down, so I can choose from one of these formulas, and then it pops up my more extensive window that lets me choose what I want to sum. Number 1, it thinks is the cell range D2 to D5, because by default, typically if you're putting a sum in, you're trying to add up everything above it. But if I actually wanted to choose 2 numbers, I can select those numbers by clicking on them and then click OK. I always suggest you hit Enter in order to get out of your formula so that you pop down to the new cell piece, because otherwise if we're up here and we start clicking around, you'll see that it's going to change my formula instead, and we don't want to do that. So if we wanted to really just use this as a calculator, we could click equals $123.45 times, which is the asterisk, shift 8, 0.13 for HST, and that would actually just tell us the HST in that column. So a lot of options are available. We are going to play with formulas a lot more in a future class, but just know that all formulas start in there, start with an equal sign. So I want you to go through some of these exercises. Go into a brand new Excel sheet, type in sheet 1 A2 the word January, and rename sheet 1 to this year. So we actually already did this by going to B1 and typed in January, and I renamed my sheet to 2013. Control N will open a brand new blank sheet for you. So again, you just go into A1, type January, rename this sheet to anything you want, maybe to the current year. When you want to move around in Excel, you can click with your mouse to go from cell to cell. I tend to use Enter and Tab and arrow keys myself because that's just my habit. I'm a keyboard person. After Windows 3.1 and all the issues that came up with losing your mouse in Windows 3.1, I got into the habit of using my shortcut keys on my keyboard. So you can use your left, right, up and down arrows. You can page up and down, Control Home, Control N. Play around with those. Make sure that you're comfortable moving from cell to cell in Excel. Now we want to enter data. Select the cell you want to enter the text into. So you can use your mouse or you can arrow through. Go to the cell you want to type in, and then type your text or data into the cell. Press the Enter key. Get in the habit of using the Enter key, especially if you're going to use a lot of formulas, which as a manager at a hotel you absolutely will. And then hit Enter. Text will go left aligned, numbers will be right aligned. Save often. Microsoft still crashes, so don't get false confidence with your program, and make sure that you're saving some backups. Sometimes you want to play around with a few different formulas and different, especially with financial projections, you might want 2 or 3 different types of scenarios you play with. Save a backup in case you get working away and you go, oh my goodness, this is ludicrous, and you need to go back to a previous version. Now we want to be able to understand how to delete contents of cells, but also to delete entire rows and entire entire columns. We need to be able to copy and paste. We need to be able to cut and paste, insert rows, change your widths, and so on. So when we are in this simple spreadsheet, if we want to insert a row above January, if we realize, oh my goodness, I really wanted to have a little title on this spreadsheet, we can right-click on the 1. Not right-click on January, because that won't give us the same options. Remember we talked about contextual menus last time? This is a contextual menu that lets you get into some of the options that you can't get into on a cell. The one I'm after is Insert. If I wanted to delete this row, I could click on the Delete. And sometimes you'll have extra rows in the midst of your spreadsheet. You don't want to leave a blank row. You want to delete the whole row. So the simplest way to get into complete rows and complete columns is to right-click on the number or right-click on the letter that is associated with it. So I'm going to click Insert, and it will by default put a row above. Now, if I know that I want to put January to December, I should fill that in so I know how many columns I'm going to take up. Because my title, I don't want to just go to F and type a title, because then my June column is going to be very wide, or I'm going to have some crazy overlapping. I want to select just the cells that are the span where I want to put my title. At that point, I can then go into my At that point, I can then just go over to this Alignment tab, click Merge and Center, and then type my title in here. I can then format that in any fashion that I want. You'll note that I still have not sized these columns. I can still, even though I've inserted a new row, I can format my column width, and it will just keep my title merged and centered. When I want to delete a column, even though I've got this set of merged cells, I still have all the options. I can say, well, let's get rid of May. I'm not really fond of May. You know what, let's get rid of February. February is a horrible cold month. I can delete that. Not something that you'd use in real life, but you'll see that I still have my title merged, centered above the content, and I can delete that. Now, up at the very top here, you'll see an undo key and a redo key. That's so you can very quickly make your changes. Those are some of the things that you're going to do often. Also a save. You can get in and save very quickly from these shortcut frequent use keys. Let's see, what else did we want to cover? Insert rows and columns. Change your column width. We've done that. Cut, copy, paste a range of cells. Again, we say this when we select more than one cell, we have selected a range of cells. I can cut those and then just click where I want the paste to begin and paste very easily. So I can use my cut and paste up here, or I can use Control X for cut, Control C for copy, Control V for paste. We've seen insert rows and columns. So I want you to practice with that and get very comfortable. This is a bit of a mouse skill, being able to right click in the places that you should, and really distinguishing between clicking with your left finger and your clicking with the left button and clicking with the right button. So I want you to practice with that a little bit. When you're formatting, again, just play around with this. This should be fairly straightforward. We come back to our format menus up here, and we've got our font selected. We can go into make larger, make smaller, play around with the background color. And again, sometimes you'll want the whole piece, the whole column to be formatted the same way. Sometimes you'll just want a range of cells. So practice with that too. If you just want to change and use a pre-made style, for instance, if I want my title to be a if I want to make my title a pre-formatted style, I can just come over to Cell Styles. So here, for instance, I might want heading 1, or I might want 40% accent 2. That takes a pre-made style and lets me apply it over and over again. So I don't have to remember what color did I use, what font did I use. I can just remember I was using the accent 2 colors. So then if I decide that I really like that accent 2 range of colors, or set of colors, I can come down and change this as well to match that color scheme. So I don't have to be a graphic designer when I'm in here playing around with things. So play with both the formatting command set, which in this case is called font because it's selecting just the font information, although it actually does apply to cells, and the styles and cells piece. Your text alignment works very much like Microsoft Word. Play around with each of these, play with your formats, change your cell background colors. I want you to be very comfortable with setting up the styles of just your content. Drag your cell range and play around with setting the formatting within that cell range. This will, of course, be on the test because it's important when you're trying to make a document look professional and easy to read. Changing the text color. The paste special, depending on what you've got on your clipboard. So you have this virtual clipboard. So here, if I select this and I click on copy, and then I go to cell A7, and I use the drop down under paste, you're going to see something kind of interesting. Look at all these options that come up. And when you mouse over each of these options, it'll show you a sample of what it will paste. If I paste this as a picture, and then I send this to somebody else, they cannot change any of the numbers. So if somebody says, oh, well, you sent me a quote, and you said it was going to include this, well, if I send it as a picture, they can't edit my quote and change it and claim that I'd said something that I wasn't wanting to offer. Now I can undo that as well. And if you want to get rid of this marching ants selection outline around your cell range, hit escape and that will get rid of that selection for you. Headers and footers. Now a lot of people don't know you can put a header and a footer into an Excel spreadsheet. When would you use this? If you're going to be printing more than one page and you want to have the page number and you want to have the document name in your document once it's printed out. So we don't want to insert another row and put a header up here and then scroll down to the bottom and say page 1, because That's not professional. We want to actually insert a header and footer in here. So click on the View tab, and we're going to change this to Page Layout. What that shows us is a print version of what will this look like once it's printed out, and you can see this is already divided into a couple of pages. Put your document name in the header in the middle column. You don't have as many options in here as you have in Microsoft Word. When you're playing around with centering and bolding, things have changed, unfortunately, on it. And back to that Design tab. So I'm in the header. In the footer, I want to put my page number. So I've just inserted that, and again, it has centered that for me. Page 1 here, page 2 here. I should not be typing the page. This shows me the code, the little symbols that it's putting in. So page, in this case, is text. I can actually add some text beside it. But as soon as you see that ampersand, that says, and include this dynamic content. And in the square brackets, the word page. If I hit enter in there, oops, I hit enter. When I click out of there, you'll see that all of my pages have changed. To get out of this view, just come back to the View tab and click Normal again, and that will bring you back. You won't see your headers and footers anymore, but you can get back to them as needed. So this will give you an idea of how you want to format the layout of your spreadsheet, because you can still see this dotted line, and as soon as you've told Excel that you're going to be printing this, that dotted line is going to stay there for you so you can see where is this going to break off, because I probably don't want this to be breaking off like that. I might want to change my orientation to a landscape orientation, and you'll see that that will change where my pages are going to break off. Under my print view, though, that's where I'll actually be able to fine-tune what's going to show. Under scaling, I can fit the sheet on one page, and now you'll see that it's zoomed out and shrunk down the sheet so that it will print in a much more attractive way.